Callahan. It's my pleasure to serve as one of the co-chairs of this committee and your facilitator to get things going this morning. Just a note that today we are recording, and this presentation will be available on the Region 7 website after the presentation. This presentation should last up to 60 minutes. It's a panel presentation. Please ensure that your microphone is muted and you can use the chat feature. If you go to the bottom, you should see some controls down there, and you should be able to go in and write comments in the chat. If that's not working for you, unmute to speak your questions. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator. It's Tolise Dailey from Johns Hopkins University, formerly here in Colorado, but she's back on the East Coast. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tolise to get us started.
Thank you, Trisha. Welcome, everyone. We're going to be discussing today virtual onboarding for remote workers. And the reason why we're here is because we're all in the backdrop of the COVID-19. And now we need to figure out how can we ensure that we deliver onboarding for our new employees and make sure that they're trained. What we will cover here in this webinar are the basics, and that is technology, how can that help us? And we're gonna find out from the panel. Engaging our workers while they're away, and also connecting and following up to ensure that they are successful in the role that they were hired in. That being said, I'm going to introduce the panelists. We have Chris Saxton from the University of Northern Colorado, Niki Spaeth from the University of Colorado Boulder, and Paul Sandoval from the University of Arizona. I will begin with the first question that I'm going to throw out to the panel, and that is, what are your goals for onboarding? And I'm going to turn that over to Niki.
Hi guys, I'm Niki Spaeth. I am the Training Development Specialist at the University of Colorado. So when we onboard new employees, our goal is always to create a support system based on mutual trust and make sure that they have the foundational knowledge to be successful. And I think for us at the Office of Contracts and Grants at the University of Colorado Boulder, we have a culture of transparency and trust that we like to pass on to our new hires. So our first and foremost goal is to make them feel comfortable and to make them feel like they're in a learning environment where it's okay to ask questions.
Paul, would you like to respond to that question?
Certainly, there are two things that we certainly look for. I think one is, how do we quickly gauge their skill sets, right? And the second is, maybe under the most unideal situations, how do they deal with pressure? How do they deal with prickly PIs? And so that's something we definitely look at.
And Chris, would you like to respond?
I'm so sorry, I responded as Paul.
That's okay. Paul, would you like to respond?
I don't know if Paul is yet on, Tolise.
Okay. So
I'll let you know when it gets on.
All right, so maybe I'll ask Ashley, would you like to respond so you can be our third panelist until Paul gets on?
All right, Tolise, you didn't see it, but my eyes just went really, really big. And there is a lot of background noise, so hold on. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Tolise, could you just tell me the question one more time?
Okay, what are your goals for onboarding?
Goals for onboarding, certainly. And, you know, we want to make sure that we're bringing, you know, folks on and making sure that they understand the culture, not only of our office, but of our entire university. We certainly want to position them to be successful in their roles. So that's, I think, my biggest goal in onboarding is making sure that they feel comfortable with their colleagues, with their role, and that they feel like they are positioned to be successful in their new role.
Thank you. All right, our next question is, what is your biggest concern or challenge with onboarding during remote work? And I'm going to turn that over to Chris this time.
Well, honestly, the big challenge for us during this current period is getting them acclimated to our systems. We run 2 or 3 systems. We're migrating to a new system, and so the onboarding process has been getting them to understand a system that we don't fully understand yet, if that makes sense. So that's been a huge challenge.
And Niki, did you want to add to that?
Sure. Yeah, I think the hardest part about onboarding, when we used to be in this environment where we could be in the office, we could take our new hires around, introduce them, put faces to names and positions and roles and responsibilities. Whereas now we have to rely purely on everything being virtual through email or through the website. And so I think our biggest concern when we recently hired 2 new people to be award and proposal coordinators. And our biggest concern was, are they gonna feel disconnected? Are they gonna feel isolated? Are they gonna feel like they're just kind of on an island all by themselves in their houses as they're taking on this new role?
Yes, and I would add to that too. I think one of the nice things about Zoom is that even though we can't be there or they can't be with us, we do have the option to be able to communicate with them via Zoom. And we can welcome them, bring people in who are going to be working with them, introduce them to a variety of people in the office, particularly the ones that they will be working closely with, is kind of helpful. And that's something we can think about doing. Does any panel member not panel member, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question or would like to share a moment what they've done when they onboarded new people during this period? Do we have any questions, Kat?
Nothing so far from the group.
Okay.
You guys feel free to unmute yourself and tune in for the discussion or type something in the chat for our panelists.
Yes. Well, I will continue to add on that part too, is that onboarding should be an interactive between the participants and the person we hired, because we know right now social distancing. I know for myself, every morning I get up, I'm in a studio apartment, I start to work and I sit here, I can sit here for like 8 hours, 9 hours and go on because I don't have to leave my have to leave work to go home because I'm already home working. And sometimes you can feel isolated. So I do think the engagement part about working with the new employee and bringing them on is very, very important. Particularly when you're giving them things to do. You want to be able to have a system where you can check on it to make sure they're being able to follow through. But more importantly, they might have questions and I don't want to bother anyone. So it might be helpful if you do have check-in moments more than once a day to make sure that they're engaging and having the directions that they need to have to do their job. Next question is, what are you doing or planning to do to address your concerns about onboarding your new employee? Niki?
So what we've done is basically we've made sure that our new hires have someone to touch base with on a daily basis. So they have a set meeting with Alexa Van Dalsum every day to make sure, you know, everything's going well, that they can ask questions that they have. But we also have other things like Slack, where it's a chat tool. Basically, we can collaborate and ask questions on Slack. So it's almost like being able to drop into someone's office and say, hey, I just got this email. What do I do with this? And I think also trust is huge right now. We have to be clear about our expectations for our new hires, because without that clarity, it's easy to feel confused and feel like you're not doing enough or you're doing too little. And as long as our expectations are clear and then we have clear expectations from them as well, I think that goes 2 ways. I think that's setting you up for success and making sure that the new hires feel comfortable and invited in.
So we've been fortunate enough to migrate to Microsoft Teams during this, and while we had used it sort of sparingly before this, during this particular period, it's been a godsend. It has the ability for chat, calls, and video conferencing. And so what we're doing with our new employees is that they have time slots with our sort of veteran GCAs and myself each day to go through certain items that are on their onboarding list literally daily, and I check in with them the last 30 minutes of the day so that we sort of discuss, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, and any questions that they may have.
I noticed that Alexa is actually one of our participants on the call. So Alexa, can you explain to us what you're discussing with the employee, the new hire during the week? Like what does that conversation sound like?
Hey, Tolise, thanks for calling me out.
My pleasure.
So it's a combination. I check in with them right now every afternoon about 2:30. So, it's, hey, how'd the day go? Do you have any concerns or questions? And I've been keeping a list of things that I need to update them on because their training is progressing and we're adding new things. So I fill them in on that. And then I do try to spend some time just chatting, what are you doing this weekend? Did you get outside for lunch? I might share something I did this weekend just to make that connection too. The other thing that we're coping with is both, I want to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. So even though they're new and they're doing a great job and trying to work hard, I want to make sure they're taking time for themselves. And then I'm also answering questions about, hey, am I going to have a job in the fall? So I'm also supporting them that way. So it covered quite a few things in our check-ins.
Awesome. I want to add to what Alexa just said. That social side of onboarding is really important because we don't want to hire someone and then they can't be interactive with the entire people on the floor and their colleagues. So I suggest that it's really good that you're not just asking them about, oh, how are you working on this project? You're asking how they feel, being able to set up a place where they can feel confident and come to you and talk to you about other things happening. I think that's awesome, and that's what we should be doing. Trisha, has Paul arrived on the call yet?
I don't believe so. We'll give it a minute here to see if he responds, but sorry about that.
We do have a question though from Vicky, one of our other members of our PEDC group. Vicky, would you like to share it out loud?
Sure. A lot of my friends and coworkers have recently hired new people since we've all gone to working remotely. And one of the concerns and challenges that they've shared with me is how difficult it can be to make sure that these new employees have the physical tools that they need to be able to work effectively, including computer equipment, laptops, monitors, etc. So how do the laptops get configured? Do you have to go to campus to meet with your IT people so that they can configure the laptop? Other coworkers have told me that they've gotten new laptops and their IT people have remoted in to set up everything. So there's a lot of differences in terms of how those things are handled depending on perhaps college, perhaps institution. So I think all of those things can really be a big challenge to figure out how to do this most effectively to get the new employees the actual equipment that they need. Do they know how to use everything? Do they have they downloaded all the programs that are required? So for example, are you using Teams? Are you using Slack? Are you using Skype? What are you using to work together with the team? So I think all of those things are items that need to be planned for and discussed ahead of time if possible.
So Alexa, can I start with you again? I'm not calling you out, Alexa. I just know you're gonna have the best answer possible for us.
You're so sweet, Tolise. So for CU, we actually have to be on campus to get the laptops connected to the system. So we had our laptops configured. My supervisor and I met with our direct reports the first day on campus, and we all wore masks and did social distancing and lots of cleaning and hand sanitizer. But they had to be on campus for that. And then our IT team, Victor, he can remote into everyone's desktop, so he did that to set them up. We keep a list of all the systems they need access to. One reason I want to meet them on campus is to make sure they had all of them up and working so they could get to work the next day. So that's our process. And then our admin team has developed a system to be able to ship office supplies and actually monitors to people's houses. So we work through that process as well. We're currently trying to figure out possibly getting chairs to people from their offices. So that'll be the next one.
Chris, did you want to add anything?
It's certainly, so my new hire is out of state. The person is actually from New Mexico, and so we were able to get IT to configure the basic laptop that they need, send it to them, and then remote in to get IT to help them get it set up. There was no way we were going to get her to Colorado to get that done, but it worked seamlessly. Well, a hiccup or two, but for the most part, seamlessly.
It appears that's exactly the same thing that we're doing at JHU. We actually physically have to go pick that laptop up, and because they have to do reconfiguration on it and everything. And once that happens, then they can take the laptop back and someone can remote in and help them through it. And again, I feel like we're mirroring the same thing at Hopkins. Our bosses, depending on the departments that you're in, has asked us, do we want a chair to work on, because it's kind of uncomfortable when you're sitting here on your own chair. So that's an option there as well. So I think these are really good points, if possible, that you can provide actually to your new employee to help them make sure that we want to make sure that everything that they do, they're comfortable at doing it, but we want to make sure they have the tools to be comfortable to do what they do. Our next question is going to be, will you share with us your plans for onboarding your new hire? What challenges are you anticipating? What resources are you engaging? So Chris, I'll start with you. Will you share with us the plans for onboarding your new hire if you have them written up already?
Well, the old onboarding plans sort of went by the wayside in this new environment. And so we had to really reconstruct one that is OSP specific. Certainly the biggest challenge again is just from our vantage point is figuring out what the person's skill sets are. Again, I got lucky. I worked with this person before. I know what her skill sets are, and so that was less of a concern. But certainly getting her used to the culture and how things are done at Northern Colorado is sort of the ongoing process. The second part, again, we talked about, making the new employees feel included, and that's a big part of it too, making sure that they have really solid time with the GCAs that have been there for a while, not to sort of teach them how to submit proposals and, the nuts and bolts of things. I know that skill set is there, but certainly just navigating the nuances of Northern Colorado is the biggest thing. Spending time with, our major proposal person to see how things are routed, who are the key players, just really a cultural indoctrination into the University of Northern Colorado. That's been the biggest thing. The systems, there are a couple of systems that the person is not familiar with, and then making sure that they have a substantial amount of time to learn those systems with guidance from myself and the assistant director, just really spending quality time and making sure that they have all of the tools and training materials that they need, which we've created some on the fly for this, but we're bringing in Streamline, and so for that, plugging them into the implementation process. So it's not totally a traditional onboarding, but certainly getting them up to speed with our systems has been a major push, getting them introduced to all of the sort of key PIs, key department managers, people that operate as GCAs at the department level, making sure that all those introductions are made and they get used to some of the nuances of the departments that they'll be serving. So they're spending dual time with sponsored programs, and then also spending time virtually through Teams with some of the important people that they'll have to interact with that they do interact with as we go through our various processes. So the biggest issue, honestly, has been systems. I don't know if anybody else here uses Teams, but at times there can be sound quality sort of technical issues that you have to navigate. They're not often, but they always seem to happen at the worst possible time. So having backups to where, I mean, literally we've had team meetings where we've all migrated to Zoom, you know, and sort of feeling that, or at times actually vice versa, but feeling comfortable enough with the platforms without making the new person feel uncomfortable while we're still going through the growing pains of figuring out this environment ourselves. So.
Chris, I think it's great that, this is Trisha, I think it's great that you all are including that time for new people to connect with the people they're going to be working with. Because I think even when we were onboarding, when we weren't in this environment, maybe we weren't doing that often enough. We actually had just started looking into our onboarding processes at Colorado State, and we had several new hires actually in post-award. And in talking with them, that was one thing that they brought up, is that they wanted to, sooner than we were doing, be introduced to the people out in the units that they would be working with. So I think that's really great you all have included that.
Well, I think it's critically important because it also gives you an opportunity to gauge how they're going to interact with these key people, and it provides really an opportunity for guidance. You know, this is what our customer service expectations are while we're going through that process.
I want to turn this question over to Alexa, but before I do, Chris, we use Teams at Hopkins, and the problem that we have, or the areas of concern, is some people don't have the bandwidth on their internet connection because they're not in the same location where we are with good internet. So we do have that trouble, but otherwise everything seems to work really well in Teams. I love the fact that you can do a video recording, you can talk on the phone, you can share documents, you can put things out there for people to take a look at, you can get a response back quickly. So I really totally think it's a good idea if you have something like Slack or Teams that you can use. So Alexa, I want to ask you this question that I asked Chris. Will you share with us your plans for onboarding your new hire? What challenges are you anticipating? What resources are you engaging?
We did adopt our current onboarding process in a lot of ways. We set up a 2-week schedule for the new hires. The other challenge we have is it's a brand new position with new ideas about what they're going to do. So they're cross-team training, which is nice because they do get to meet more people. But it's been an interesting thing to wrap into all the other changes that we have. The technology's been a bit of a problem, but I think that's gotten smoothed out. I think I've been real honest with them as far as this is the first time we've done it. We're going to have hiccups. Let us know what we can do better. So that's been a good part of the process. I've definitely tapped Niki to figure out how to better both handle meetings and trainings, and she's given us some good resources for that. Beyond that, I'm not sure yet what else we're going to change for future onboarding. We're going to go back to our new hires and see what they thought of the process and what we could do better and what worked well for them. And Niki, I don't know if you want to add anything else on what you might think about changing for our onboarding.
I did actually get a chance to touch base with our 2 new hires, and they said actually in some ways onboarding remotely has been incredible. So one way that they've really liked so far is the ability to screen share. So when they're being trained, they can actually have, our database system on their computer screen, and then in real time get feedback from our SMEs. So as they're getting trained, they're actually getting to do the work and then getting feedback immediately. And I think that's something that I would like to see continue to happen even after we're all at the office, because it's so much harder when you're, over someone's shoulder and you're kind of having to look at their screen, or someone's over your shoulder. And it's just a different experience than when you're at the keyboard and you're getting that direct feedback. We've also had the ability to you can actually give access to your computer screen to someone else. And that's also been a really helpful way to kind of interact in training, especially when so much training is really based on the computer in data entry and things that they're using, versus just filling them with information and hoping that they absorb it.
Thanks, Niki. First of all, I want to welcome Paul because he has now joined us. And before I go to Paul, I just want to ask Ashley, what issues have you had with your new staff?
Well, fortunately, the new staff that I had been in our office. Now we're in the midst of promoting them to a new position, but at least they've been acclimated to our office, their colleagues, different things like that. But they were in the process of being trained for their new role. And that has certainly posed some challenges for them in being able to kind of have that hands-on, on-the-job training. Definitely more so in the technical aspects. And so at CSU, most of our employees are remoting in. So they're using their own personal device and remoting into their desktop at the office. Well, as many of you likely know, that poses issues then with using audio and visual if you're using a system like Teams or Zoom or anything like that, where you are accessing either share screen, using control of the screen, and using any of those audio visual type things. So a workaround for that is that you don't have to be on camera necessarily to be working with these folks. And so, okay, we've taken the camera aspect out. The audio, well, pick up the phone and call each other, right? And so then you've taken out the aspect of, well, I need to be using this, Microsoft Teams, or I need to be using Zoom on my personal computer. You can actually use it on the remote part, because now you're not using the things that don't really work, the camera, the microphone. You're using your cell phone, or maybe a few out there with a landline, to have the conversation and be talking to one another while you can still be remoted in and utilizing the share screen access there. So that's been our workaround, but it definitely still has some challenges. It's definitely still different than sitting next to that person like Niki was, describing earlier, and having that hands-on, on-the-job training. But I think as far as, using the technology that is available, figuring out the little nuances that you've got to work around, it is the approach that we are currently taking. I might have to report back that whether it worked or didn't work, but it seems to be okay right now.
That's a good thing. So Paul, we have a couple of questions that I want to go back and ask you, since you were not able to be on the call earlier, which we totally understand. What are your goals for onboarding your employees?
I think one of the main goals is to make them feel like they're part of a team, because they're so isolated and they don't have that one-on-one, so they can't really develop those relationships as they normally would with our other staff. They probably have a very close relationship with their supervisors and their current team members, but the other staff is becoming challenging to develop that relationship with them.
So are you encouraging the other team members to, when the employee comes in, to say, send them an email? Perfect.
Yeah, what we do is we are using Slack, and we have a channel that we call Home Life or something like that, where it's not about work. It's more about, introducing yourself, showing the humor in our staff so that people can interact more. We have invited that new person to all the little team meetings that we have with the individual team, so they can get to know her a little bit better. We're just using the technology that we have. However, it is challenging when you don't have that one-on-one interaction. But it's working right now. Everybody, is using the tools available. And when I did come on, all the answers that everybody was giving is something that we're trying.
Awesome. So what is your biggest concern or challenge with onboarding during remote work?
Like I said before, the challenges of just creating that interaction with other people. Other than that, it's been going really well. Like screen sharing, Zoom meetings, Slack, all those technology that we were afraid to use before, we're becoming experts in. And one thing that's helped us tremendously is we have our own computer support within our office. And so if we also remote desktop in, and there have been times when, the computer at work turns off for some reason, that, that computer person, we're able to contact him immediately and he's able to get those computers up and running. And also is really important for onboarding, like all the different systems that they need to have. We made sure that she was onboarded before she started. So that way she wasn't waiting a couple of days to access our research system and looking at that kind of stuff.
Awesome. One of the things that I'm trying to implement, which what I loved about having people being able to socialize with each other, is this thing called Social Dissident Spirit Week. And the idea is to come up with a theme for Monday, come up with a theme for Tuesday, like Meme Day Monday, something Tuesday, and where you can actually, instead of having everyone participate by contacting the new person who just came in, assign certain people, like the first 5 people here will go and make sure Monday you send them a text or something, connect with them. And then the next 5 will respond to them on Tuesday. And I think that's very helpful because, again, I go back to what all of you have emphasized, is that social part when you're working by yourself and you're new in a group, you don't get to meet with everyone right now that we're in this COVID-19 experience. My next question is going to be to Niki. Niki, can you share your recent experience with onboarding a new hire? What do you think worked well? What didn't? And what feedback have you received thus far? And feel free to ask me to repeat that question.
Yeah, so in the way that we onboard at CU is that we have them meet with our actual team members to do the onboarding and training. So I actually just met with both of the new hires and asked them how they felt about it. And one of the things that we're fortunate to do is hire multiple people at the same time. And they both said that it has been incredible to kind of experience this with someone else. So they're not the only new person there, that they have kind of a buddy that they're in this with. And they said that they often Slack each other all day, asking questions back and forth, because there's something more comfortable about asking a question to, a fellow newbie versus, hey, could you tell me again about, I know you said that, but then to ask someone who's also new and say, did you catch that in the last training? They also mentioned that each of them asked different questions in the training that the other one didn't think of. And so it expands their knowledge and kind of the things that they thought that they knew or didn't know, and really exposes those areas that they still need to work on. I would say that hiring in cohorts is it's a great way to go. You can do a lot of training and have all of them there at once versus having to do the same training time and time again, every month, every couple months, so on and so forth.
And Paul, I want to ask you the same question. Can you share your recent experience with onboarding a new hire? What do you think worked well? What didn't? And what feedback have you received thus far from them?
I think one of the main things for us is we have a very comprehensive procedural manual for all our different areas. We have it in Confluence, which is searchable. It's like a wiki. And I think that manual has helped our entry-level people use as a reference, and also our not entry-level people use as a reference. Before this, we had Word documents that had our procedures. People would put it on their desktop, make changes, and then before you know it, kind of morph into something different. So this allowed us to stabilize our processes, and also if anybody made any edits, changes, it went through change management. So I think with our onboarding, we have the general manual is more general, and then it dives into the weeds and gives step-by-step instructions of how to do certain things that can you do step by step. I think that has been instrumental in the success for our onboarding, to have that resource out there for them. Let's see, what was the other side of that question? Sorry. What was the last part of that question?
I believe it was about feedback.
And then we use our new employees to tell us, what didn't you understand about that manual? And then they give us feedback, and then we tweak it, and then we pass it around to everybody else and see if it made more sense. Because having new eyes on it and telling and giving us feedback saying, you know what, I really didn't understand what you were saying in this section. So that was very important for us to get feedback. And then we go ahead and, try to, rewrite it into a more easily understood version, because the people who are writing this are the experts. And so they would write it and think, oh, it's very easily understandable. But then we get somebody new and fresh, they're like, oh, wait a minute, this might make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to me. So there was a lot of iterations of that going on. And I think we finally have it where, or when our new people start, there's no changes, because it's been gone through so many iterations of new people. Okay. Did we lose a moderator?
We may have, until she can get back. We had somebody, Sylvia Bradshaw, put in the chat box addressing remote offboarding ideas. She shared that they had a long-term employee who took an early retirement, and they started a congratulatory email, which turned into this great big reply all environment. Sylvia, do you want to unmute and share a little bit more about that?
You bet. This is one of those catch-22 type situations where we were looking so forward to onboarding in a remote environment. And since, of course, the institution, in an effort to cut back, has offered these early retirement packages, and one of our very valued people in our very small office decided to take that opportunity. And then they also imposed a hiring freeze. So we don't get the opportunity to onboard remotely, but now we get the opportunity to offboard remotely, and then to help pick up the slack. So we're just in a situation where we're really trying to give proper celebration to her and all the effort she's given to us over her long career. At the same time, staying positive about the future and going forward, and just looking for some ideas.
We had the same scenario where we had a person that announced her retirement after the stay-at-home orders, and we did a virtual happy hour for her. So it was like we curated a Zoom meeting, and everybody just logged in, and everybody had their beer, and we chink kind of thing, and just told stories about our interactions with her, and she told stories about interactions with us, and it was really nice. It was a really nice send off, because we were struggling with the same thing as how do we recognize this long-standing employee, and with social distancing and not being able to get together and have a celebration to celebrate her retirement and her contributions to our department. So it really helped out having this happy hour social hour. In fact, we continued it the next week just to have social interactions.
So did you all didn't do a drive-by retirement party?
We thought about it, but she was like so against that. She was like, no, you don't have to do that kind of thing for me. But
I just love how creative people are getting. I didn't know that the drive-by birthday party was a thing until I was walking this weekend with my daughter, and we saw one. My daughter explained to me what it was, but yeah.
It's amazing how people will just, think outside of the box for these kind of situations.
Right.
And we encourage, like, if you can drink, have a beer. If you don't want to drink, don't have a beer. But everybody was having a good time. And then we did play trivia pursuit.
Oh, that's
fun.
Yeah.
I would definitely say do the happy hours if you can. And we've taken the happy hours a step farther a little bit. We did a happy hour, and then we had some people stay on a little longer, and we just broke out into sing-alongs, to dancing, and it just probably got a little crazy, but we were all happy.
And this actually helped us get to know our new employee better too. She was.
So can I request a video recording of that, Tolise, to get a better idea of what you're doing out there?
Yeah, offline, offline.
We did promise that we will not be recording it.
All
Share what resources we can on our PEDC website after this. I don't know if that will be included.
Actually, Kat, I do want to bring you into this conversation before I go to the next question. That is that the grants department or division within CU Boulder, they created the Onenote, which is a little place where it houses all information out about the specific sponsors. And you can go into that Onenote and pull up all the information you need. Can you tell us how and why that was developed and how you're using it right now?
So each of our teams, contracts, grants, proposals, each have a OneNote that they were using in different ways. And now our offices combine those into the books. So we have a book of sponsors that is shared across teams now, and a book of InfoEd being our system. So that onboarding guide and the grants guide are all being expanded out right now to be accessible to everyone, especially, or we did this before we went remote, but it is super helpful right now that those information lines are open. Yeah, and we're hoping to do more with it in the next year. I know Niki's helping us with fill in some gaps for research administration, and we'll possibly do that on another onboarding discussion for NCURA another day. How to customize your training.
And so then my next question is going to be, for the new employee, after you've onboarded them and they've been there for, say, 2 months, how do you continue to engage them so that they're still part of the process? It's not just like, we got you here, we've onboarded you, we've given you all the information. What is it that you're going to do to continue to check in with them? Because again, they're still new and they're still learning the process, because we can't learn everything about our office in 2 months. And I'll start off with Niki first, and then I'll work my way through the panel. Niki?
Yeah, at CU Boulder, our SMEs work very closely with our new hires. A lot of times we work in teams, so depending on what position the new hire is taking on, their teams are super helpful. And each team really has their own onboarding process that they self-direct. So I know the grants team has their own onboarding that Kat's really led the charge in, as well as proposals has their own onboarding. And because, as Alexa mentioned before, this is actually a brand new position to our office. It's been a collaborative effort between Alexa, Pam, our compliance officer, Penny Matthews, to really kind of team up together and surround them and bring them in as part of a team, so that there's not really a point at which we just let them go. I think the team mindset is really, you know, it follows us from when we get hired to when we leave. So I don't ever feel like our employees are really left alone in their jobs.
Chris, can you comment?
Sure. So we're a smaller office, and we work pretty closely on a day-to-day basis anyway. And so I think whether it's through the virtual environment, through Teams, or when we eventually get back to campus, whenever that might be, the dynamics, for at least for us, will not change that much. You're on any given day are going to be working with one of the other team members closely on a project. So I'm hoping that how we're trying to mimic that virtually will last until we get back to in-person working. But certainly constant check-ins. I don't see, not having that I might, slow down the end of the day one-on-ones to maybe every Friday or first thing Monday or something like that, and then making sure that they have scheduled blocks with some of the other team members as we go through. But certainly not having any like significant time slots where they're not engaging with somebody within the office.
And Paul, what are you doing at your institution?
What everybody else mentioned here. We're doing numerous check-in meetings. We are very team-oriented, so there's a lot of, okay, I will pick up this proposal, you do that proposal kind of thing going on with our office. So our teams are in constant communication, and they have Slack channels that are open just for them that they're, constantly communicating. I think it's just maintaining that communication is key. Any way you can do it. Either phone calls or chats or video, just having the video screen open to have them there so we can ask specific questions if they need.
Awesome. And here's one question that was proposed at my institution, and we was proposed actually to the supervisors, and they each had their own mechanism of doing this. So when you do have that new employee, and we're doing again in the time of COVID-19, what measurements do you have in place to check on them to ensure that they are working during the period that they should be? Meaning we're all working remotely. I know for me, and I'll say this, sometimes it takes me longer because I'll spend maybe like 9 or 10 hours because in between I get to go do a run, I get to step back, maybe have coffee again or do something different, but I come back to work. So what measurements are you putting in place to evaluate that new employee while they are working remotely? And again, this time I'll start with Paul.
I think with us, we create assignments. So we say, these are the proposals, review these proposals, and then and then they make all the notes and the supervisor can check it, all that stuff. It's here's your assignment, I'll review your work kind of thing. So I think that keeps them on top of board. So that keeps us going. So if they're taking a little bit longer, we could reach out and say, are you having issues with this proposal review or this grants.gov submission that we can help out on? I think it's just maintaining that communication is key to making sure that they are being productive.
Thank you. Chris?
I think the same thing, keeping them engaged with assignments. With teams, most of the team is logged on there. You can see if someone has been out for a significant amount of time, and if you kind of notice that, say, hey, are you doing okay? You need some help, those kind of things. But certainly the communication and keeping them engaged with assignments that, you review until, you can learn to trust them, basically.
And Niki, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to pump this question over to Alexa Van Dalsum. She's been the one working closely with our new hires on their day-to-day work. Alexa, what do you think?
So this is a question that comes up a lot when we talk about remote work. Ashley and I did a session about remote work, and this is a common question. And I think the biggest thing that helps with that in our work is we have a constant feedback loop. So if our employees are not working, we hear from PIs, we hear from staff. So there is almost no way to get away without not working and not hear about it. The other thing I've been doing is checking in with supervisors on other teams. So our staff are working on logging new awards. So I've just checked in and said, hey, how's it going? Have you heard any feedback? So that's been really helpful. And then we've actually had staff too just say they're doing a great job. So I'm been seeking out feedback from other people who are interacting with them. But I would say that's actually one of my least concerns with remote work is they're working, and it's no different than if they're in the office. So I have good feedback.
And I would say yes, given most of the people I've talked to about this, they say they find that they have way more work taking place with their employees now that they're working remotely because they can work at their own pace. They can stop, start again. So I totally agree with you on that note. Trisha, is there anything else that you would like us to add before we open this up to the audience and the participants who are listening?
No, that was all really. Just to remind people, I guess, that the recording, along with a transcript of any kind of questions or comments that came in, will be available on the NCURA Region 7 website. Also, we've had some panelists who have shared some of their resources, so we will definitely be sharing those resources on the regional website. If you all have resources you want to share, you can send them to the email that's indicated on your screen, that OSP info email, and we will get those resources up, whether those resources are for onboarding, remote training, or offboarding.
Trisha, I'm not signing my release form until you remove the part about dancing.
Okay.
It looks like
It acts like we have a release form.
there was one more question that came up on the chat as far as advice for new employees in this situation. That's a great one. I think one of the ones for my new employees is I want them to know that our office is so happy they're there, and that they should jump in. So I've encouraged them to post stuff on Slack and get involved, and just try to get them involved so they know that people are welcoming them.
Thanks, Alexa. So does anybody want to add anything else from the panel before? Ashley, do you want to add anything?
Not really anything to add other than hang in there. And if you come, across anything, please email the OSP_info or any one of the folks on the PEDC to tell us what you've encountered, what successes you've had, what struggles. And we'd be happy to continue to add that sort of information to our website so that others can benefit from it as well.
Thank you. Chris, do you have any closing remarks or comments?
Just that, embracing technology in a hurry has turned out to be a really good thing, and certainly don't be afraid to try. I've never heard of Slack. I'm going to be checking it in about 15 minutes. But certainly be willing to embrace the new technology and hang in there.
And Paul, do you have any comments that you want to add?
I would echo Chris, embracing new technology. I was one of those people that didn't show when I logged into Zoom, I didn't show my face, it didn't interact much, but now that's become the norm that you have to interact. And that's how you're going to get that social interactions that you're not going to have, is if you provide your staff with cameras and microphones and all that stuff so they can utilize it. One of the biggest challenges we're having is, of course, some people just don't have good internet connections. So we're trying to figure out how we help that. And U of A is experiencing furloughs now. And so we're trying to figure out how we're going to do furloughs with new employees, because we want to make sure that there's someone available for them to ask questions. And so we're trying to juggle all that kind of stuff around. So it's been challenging.
Well, I'd like to thank the panel. Trisha, did you want to thank the panel or?
I would love to thank the panel, and you can also, and also thank you, Tolise, for moderating today. We appreciate you stepping in and providing, the definition to get us oriented on what we're talking about today, and hosting. We really appreciate you being with us. So thank you, panel members, and everybody who was able to join and chime in. Also, if you have ideas for discussion topics that are timely that you would like us to put together, this is the third discussion topic that we've had, and they've been well attended. We've had really great participation, which we appreciate. So we shared the email here in the slide and in the chat box. So if you have anything that you'd like to share, please do so. And that's all I had, Tolise.
All right, thank you, panel. And again, Trisha, thank you for inviting me to do this.
You're welcome. Thank you all. Everybody have a great afternoon.
Yes.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.